Welcome to the New Life Stories channel. We hope you will have fun with us. Enjoy watching.
I met this Friday morning intern just 6 months ago. I am the principal of a prestigious private university, and every year we open a special program to provide scholarships to students from low-income families. This year's winner was a young man in his 20s whom I'll call Thomas. He was from a coastal town, but he had made great strides in his young years. It was obvious from his academic performance that he would be a model student. He came to my office that day in his best clothes to start his career, and I greeted him as protocol dictated. But from the moment he walked into my office and introduced himself, announcing that he was the winner of this year's scholarship, I felt a warmth run through my entire body. My heart raced, and in that moment I realized that I had fallen in love, or as some people call it, I had fallen in love at first sight. I won't give my name to protect my identity, but I am a married woman. I have a son 2 years younger than Thomas, and I have been a university principal for almost 2 decades. I studied law and now own a law firm. Being a director has opened up many opportunities for me, and through it I met my husband. My work life has been my greatest pride. I have dedicated myself, body and soul, to my work, and I realize that I have lost precious moments with my son because of it. Although I feel the pain of not dedicating myself to motherhood full-time, I don't really regret anything. There are women who are born to be wives and mothers. They have a calling to care for and nurture a family, but I never felt identified with that. The most important thing in my life has always been my work. The things that fill me up, the things that make me feel valued. When I was just a wife and mother, I didn't feel powerful, but when I became a principal, a successful lawyer who turned a small firm into a recognized brand, I was truly happy. So it wasn't just my relationship with my son that suffered, but also my married life. My husband and I were still together out of habit to keep up appearances, but we no longer loved each other. I want to clarify that I love my son and support him in everything, and I loved my husband madly. But there are some things that cannot be maintained only in the company of another, and over time that love faded away, becoming a distant memory. Now he and I were 2 old friends who shared a lot of things, who had a shared history, and we were fine with that. But the arrival of Thomas changed my perspective, because since I had been dating my husband, I hadn't felt as attracted to a man as I did now. It didn't make sense to me, so I reasoned logically. Of course I was attracted to a young man like Thomas. I'm a 48-year-old woman who hasn't forgotten what it's like to feel attracted to a handsome man, and Thomas is exactly that. At the time of that interview, I had no idea our paths would cross, and as the months went by little my outlook on life changed. I was in the office signing some documents when my secretary informed me that a student wanted to see me. I asked her to let him through, and my surprise was even greater when the very young man who had won the scholarship walked in. "Good morning, Principal." The intern greeted me with a slight bow. He stood in front of the desk. "Good morning." I greeted him back and gestured for him to sit down. I couldn't remember his name that day, but I quickly recalled his face. The intern looked confused, as if he didn't know how to start a conversation. "What can I do for you?" I asked in a friendly tone. His awkward posture struck me as odd, because I didn't remember it that way. "I can no longer accept the scholarship." He hurriedly uttered this while looking at me intently. I opened my eyes at his words. "Well," I asked, "what is the reason for your decision?" He was silent for a few seconds, staring at the ground. When he opened his mouth to speak, something in his posture told me he wasn't happy with his decision. "I have personal problems," he replied, adding nothing more. I contemplated what to say next, because I usually go to the scholarship committee to inform them of the situation. But my intuition told me to forget about protocol. Every year we give scholarships to young people like you. I explained. And in all the years I've been principal, we've never awarded a scholarship to an outstanding student like you. For us, a student of this caliber is a source of pride, and that's why we are generous with the benefits we include in the scholarship. Also, I remember that you were looking forward to starting your career, which, if I remember correctly, would be as a lawyer, correct? He mumbled yes. So what happened? If there's anything we can do to help you, just tell us, I said, breaking the formality. The intern had slumped shoulders and a grim face, and I sensed it was more than that. I'm grateful for everything you've done for me, he said without hesitation. But I don't come from a rich family like everyone else, and my father is ill. He is the only support in my house. And while I am studying, I have no way to help him. At that moment, my mind quickly searched for a solution. And the solution was found. I offered him a part-time job in my firm as an intern. I thought I was doing it for the right reasons. To give a young man who had a promising future a chance to realize that he deserved to go to the university of his dreams without any problems. To get a part-time job and help his loved ones. He immediately agreed, and within a few days, I arranged to reduce his course load so that he could work part-time at my firm. In addition, since the university premises were very far from my personal office, I offered him the opportunity to work with me at the university. Thomas, whose name I didn't remember at that second meeting, was the kind of person who doesn't miss an opportunity, and within a week he had adapted to the job perfectly. He always arrived 20 minutes early and left in the afternoon when he had class. In his rare free moments, I caught him in the library studying, and when we had to travel to the office to solve a problem, he took advantage of those trips to continue studying. Over the next few weeks, my relationship with Thomas went from formal to cordial. He was very diligent, so I never had to get his attention or remind him of anything. On the contrary, Thomas not only did his job well, but also suggested new ideas and was constantly interested in things. He seemed happy in what he was doing, and I was happy to help him. It wasn't until one day that I realized that the affection I felt for him wasn't maternal. It wasn't the inevitable appreciation a teacher feels for a model student. Rather, it was something deeper, and it scared me. Thomas could be my son, I told myself once, but another part of me contradicted me, replying that he wasn't and that I shouldn't see him that way. But I knew it was wrong to look at him through different eyes because he was still young, and I wasn't. Because between us, there would always be a chasm that would be hard to bridge, and I wouldn't be the one to do it. Unfortunately for my conscience, fate had other plans. Thomas remained a spectator at one of my firm's trials. I, along with 3 top attorneys, had prepared a fail-safe defense, and Thomas asked my permission to attend. After a long defense, we finally prevailed and, as was the custom, went to the office to celebrate. My team ordered food from the restaurant and drinks started showing up in every corner. This endeavor took us several weeks. Everything seemed to be going against our client. But we got the job done, and happiness was evident in everyone, including Thomas, who seemed ecstatic about what was happening. I invited him in when we left the courtroom, and he congratulated us with great enthusiasm. "Celebrate with us, Thomas," I invited him with a smile. "Yes, Thomas, come with us so you can see how the lawyers celebrate," said one of the lawyers on my team. For several hours we celebrated, and as everyone said goodbye to us, the office gradually emptied until it was just me in my office and Thomas at the front desk. At one point during the celebration, I snuck into the office to tell my husband that we had won the trial and that I would be late, but receiving no response, I sat with a bottle in my hand, feeling miserable for some unknown reason. And it was in those moments that there was a knock at the door, and Thomas came in. His cheeks were flushed and his eyes were cloudy. I could see that he'd had a couple beers, but it seemed like the first time he'd had so much. "Are you okay?" he asked. "Yeah, are you?" I replied. I took a long sip from the bottle and noticed Thomas looking at me curiously. "I've never seen you like this," he said. "How, drunk?" I replied with a smile. "So relaxed," Thomas replied. He walked over to the couch and sat down, looking around the office in complete silence. "What did you think of the trial? Did you take notes?" I asked. I got up from the chair, walked over to one of the chairs in front of the couch, and sat down. From this distance, I could smell Thomas's perfume. "It's amazing," he replied, radiating emotion. "Are you always this relentless?" I laughed at his question. "Yes, I've earned a reputation for being somewhat tough in court," I replied with a smile. "You're charming," he said, but then seemed to regret it. "I'm sorry, I said that inappropriately." "It's just that you're intimidating. You're so beautiful, and am I scaring you, Thomas?" I interrupted him. Thomas stared at me silently, but his expression was like that of a frightened puppy. "A little, to be honest," he answered quietly. "Why exactly?" I asked. "Because I'm rude to the jury, or because I'm attractive?" "Both," he answered immediately. We were silent for a few seconds, just watching each other. But I could read the message his eyes were screaming, and when his gaze crossed the line, I couldn't take it anymore. We let what we had been cooking cook, slowly, carefully, and thoroughly. In his arms, I realized that something so simple could change everything, and that although Thomas was inexperienced, life would make him a capable man in all areas. And in that moment, when I discovered my deepest feelings for him, I felt that everything was okay, that as long as he and I were together, nothing else mattered to me. "Have you done this before?" I asked as my lungs demanded air. He was beautiful like this, with his eyes clouded with love and his face relaxed. "No, never. This is the first time," he replied softly, confirming my suspicions. "Really?" I asked in disbelief. "How could that be possible?" "I haven't had time to fall in love," he answered after a moment, but his voice shook, though he seemed sure of what he was saying. I didn't bother asking because we'll have time to get to know each other better. "You don't need a girl for this, Thomas," I murmured. "I'll show you what love can do." He didn't say anything, just leaned back against the back of the couch, and when the feeling flooded through his body, he whispered. That was incredible, and a satisfied smile spread across his face. "You know what else was incredible?" I asked in a whisper, hinting that something better was coming next, that what we had started would have an ending, but a good one and an incredible one. Like a snake on the hunt, I decided that what I was feeling for this humble intern was no mere attraction. "There are a couple things they don't teach you in college," I whispered, "and this, for example, is something you won't see in any diploma course." Thomas was a quick study, and what started out as an inexperienced and clumsy dance was replaced with a more confident one that I'll never forget. I didn't want either of us to realize the reality, the taboo nature of our encounters. So I freed myself from the bonds that had bound me all my life. My body was freed from the guilt that would cloud this moment, and I gave myself to love. At the moment this situation occurred, it didn't matter that he was an intern with an uncertain future. It didn't matter that I was a married woman. Alcohol freed our minds from all the bonds that prevented us from living, and we did so indefinitely. I woke up the next morning alone and with a sense of remorse that caused me to miss work for the first time in years. At home, I thought about how much I had missed out, how much I wanted to feel like I did last night in Thomas's company. Lying in bed, I wondered when I had last felt like this, so alive, so new and energized. A long time ago, my mind answered a second later, because I couldn't remember the last time, because it seemed to block everything out, because when my life was work-based, feelings had no place, they weren't a priority. And my husband became a stranger, a man who wanted the same things I did, to let time dictate our future, because neither of us dared to end our relationship, even though it was obvious we were no longer a couple. The day after we met, Thomas came into my office and with a flushed face told me that he wanted to continue what we had left for the morning. And I agreed without hesitation. Because at that moment, there was nothing I could say no to this handsome intern who had come into my life, ready to show me that a woman like me still had a second chance to love without limits. And even though it was sometimes hard for me to look my husband in the eye, deep down what I was doing with my intern made up for it. It had been so long since I had felt liberated that nothing else mattered to me. To this day, my husband doesn't know anything, and I hope for our son's sake it stays that way. What would you do in a situation like mine? Would you let yourself get carried away with your feelings despite your age? Don't forget to give this video a like and subscribe to my channel. Thank you, and until next time.